Hi everyone, a very good evening. My name is Garima Gupta and I'm here representing the iDream career team. For all of you who do not know me, I work in the capacity of a program manager, and today we are looking at being participative at in one of our webinars for the Education Abroad series. So for those of you who are basically new to this webinar series, this particular webinar will be focused on admission overseas process at Singapore and Hong Kong. We have been doing a webinar series on the overseas admission process altogether. So first and foremost, we covered an overview, and then we moved on to countries of US and UK. And today we'll be covering the countries of Singapore and Hong Kong. For many of you, you may also be not knowing what iDream Career is all about. So iDream Career is a career counseling venture that is there for almost 10 years now. We have been working with a lot of government states and at the same time a lot of international agencies, UNICEF, UNDP, CSF, etc. We also work with a lot of private schools and government schools and NGOs and other institutions, providing career counseling services to the students primarily from class 7th, 8th onwards till first year to second year of graduation. To name a few schools, we work with Kunskapsskolen, we work with the Sindhya School, the Sri Ram School, Navy Children's School, and a number of them. We also run our own training and certification program, which is the certification in career counseling for aspiring individuals who plan to become career counselors and help the society. So on that note, welcoming all of you to this webinar. You may be a counselor, you may be from a school, you may be from a teacher, a principal, you may also be a student. So we assure you that this webinar is going to bring a lot of insights about the topic. And if you would have any questions to ask, please go ahead and put it down in the YouTube chat box. We will take it up from there and address your queries through the speaker. So right before we move into the webinar, I always do, some of you may already be knowing the webinar host, Ms. Shilpa Pathak. So Shilpa ma'am, a very, very, near and dear friend to all of us. She has been associated with iDream Career for a very long time now. She is a senior counselor, a trainer, as well as a mentor for the IDC team. It's been almost 2 decades, I believe, that is her work experience altogether being a career counselor. She has served being a counselor at the RN Podar School at Bombay, one of the most prestigious schools of the country. And at the same time, she expertises in overseas admission processes itself. So Shilpa ma'am, thank you so much for being here once again, finally concluding this series of the overseas admission process. It's always a delight to hear you. I would request you to please unmute yourself and take away from this webinar.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Garima. Always a pleasure to hear the generous compliments that you always give. So as she has said, this is the 4th part of the education abroad, and we have covered other countries. So this time we are just doing Singapore and Hong Kong. Now, as in all the other webinars that I have done, I will give you an overview as to what is the admission process, some of the top colleges, what are the requirements that are there, what is the education system like, why do they choose these countries, and also what is it, how does a student stay back and work while graduating or even after graduation. And so hopefully this will give you a small overview of both the countries if students are wanting to take admissions there. So we're starting off with Singapore. So why Singapore? As Garima had said, I was serving in RN Podar School for more than 10 years. And many students who are looking for overseas education, not necessarily as a first option, they would think of Singapore for many reasons. Some of them, as I have listed, is that the tuition fees are lesser. The proximity is there for the country where it's closer to India. Also, they do not require, many of the universities don't require any entrance exams. And it is based on purely on your academics in your 11th and 12th, actually 12th standard, not even 11th standard. It's safe. The country is safe. They have stringent legal system, and they have many foreign institutions such as, INSEAD, Chicago Booth, Yale, NUS, SV Jain. They have their campuses in Singapore as well, and these universities are really recognized across the world for their high academic performances. So that is why Singapore becomes a very attractive destination for many students. So when I look at students, and when students come to me after the 12th standard, there is a certain admission process, but I don't know how many students and parents are aware that there are scholarships that are there available for students who have finished the 10th standard and wish to go to Singapore and complete their 11th and 12th in Singapore, so as to have a stepping stone or a better chance of getting into the foreign universities thereafter. So one of the scholarships that is available for a 10th pass student, for an Indian student, is the GIIS Singapore Global Citizens Scholarship. There's a chain of schools, Indian international schools that are there, with 20 campuses over in 7 countries, and they award 100% tuition fees, boarding, lodging, travel expenses for the complete 2 years. So a student can then complete his or her 10th, 11th and 12th standard for this one, it is through either the CBSE board or the IGCSE board, and they can be, having this full scholarship for these 2 years. So what are the details? As I said, you get the full benefit, tuition fees, everything that is needed, subsidized medical benefits are there, and there are no bonds attached. As you go into the subsequent slides, you will realize that there are certain scholarships for Singapore that warrant a certain bond for students to work there in Singapore. So the eligibility criterion for this scholarship is basically, having passed your 10th standard, having English as the first language. It is very, very competitive. Your 9th and 10th pre-board exams should be over 80% or A's in all of the subjects for CBSE students. But this is the minimum. I mean, you would need to have much more than that. So you would need to have a very, very high academic record for, being eligible for this scholarship. And even for the IGCSE students, they need to use the extended curriculum and not the core curriculum, and have 10, for their class 10. So the shortlisted students are then invited for a written examination, and then if they pass the examination, they will have an interview, a Skype interview, and then for the elimination round. And then if they subsequently pass that, then they will have a face-to-face interview. So it's a highly competitive scholarship, and but yes, it is available for students who are from India who wish to pursue their 11th and 12th in Singapore. Another one of these type of scholarships is the SIA's Youth Scholarship. This again is the same type of scholarship where it is for Indian nationals who have completed their 10th standard. Again, it is a very highly competitive scholarship, and it's saying that you need to have about 85% and the minimum A in English. But as I said, these are just the minimum. You would really need to have a lot more. Here, if you go for your 11th and 12th, you will do it through the Cambridge board and have A levels at the end of your 11th and 12th. So again, the same thing applies. You apply for this scholarship. There are application rounds, interviews, shortlisted candidates again are being interviewed, and the test and venue of the interview here is Delhi. So the benefits are the same. You have total settling allowance, hostel accommodation, the tuition fees are covered for the whole thing, for the whole 2 years. return economy fare, air passage is there, and the examination fees are also covered, and subsidized medical benefits are also there. So it's a very prestigious, both the scholarships are very prestigious, and as I said, highly competitive to get through. But yes, one can think of it if, if a student is really ready, to think about going straight after their 10th standard. It's not an easy decision, but some students may want to do that because they may be very sure of what they want to do. Okay, so I just want to list some of the top universities that are there in Singapore that many of you would be knowing. 6 national universities, NUS, NTU, SMU, SUTD, MIT, SIM, and so on. So these are the top universities that are there, having more than 30,000 students in NUS and NTU. They are ranked very high. They are difficult to get through because they are totally into academics. As I said, they don't look for any other entrance exams. So you need to have a very good percentage in your 12th standard. So the plus point of this is that if students, think of this at the last minute and don't have time to prepare for any entrance exams, then this becomes a good thing because they can just apply and see if they get in. So, so these are some of the universities that are there, top universities of Singapore. Now, Singapore has a very attractive policy, which is run by the government of Singapore, where they are helping students with their tuition fees. So there is something that the Ministry of Education provides for all students, whether they are Singapore citizens, permanent residents, or even international students. There is something called a tuition grant. So a tuition grant is something that anybody that applies for a university education after their 12th standard can avail of. It subsidizes the fees for, for the programs significantly. So when the student is filling in the form, they have to, put down whether they are interested in the tuition grant. So, this is a very, very, very lucrative. As I said, it's a very good thing. The only thing with this tuition grant is that permanent residents and international students will then have to serve a bond for 3 years upon graduation. So the bond is basically the student would have to, work for a Singapore registered company. It may not be in Singapore, it may be, but it has to be a 3-year bond that they will have to do. So, which is really not a bad thing because you could get a job straight away there. So, but it gives a significant reduction in the tuition cost. As I said in the subsequent slides, I will show you the difference in the cost of with the tuition grant and without it. So this is a very, very good thing where the government of Singapore is encouraging students to, come from outside, international students, as well as their own Singapore students to, go in for higher education. There is something called discretionary admissions. Now, initially, until now, they used to, NTU, NUS, and SMU used to set aside 15% of their admissions for, according to their own discretion. So what this means is basically if a student has not got the required academic profile, doesn't have the, the percentage that is needed for a specific program, then they will look into other things that, that they may be having, which demonstrates their ability, whether it is in community service or some exceptional talent, or they have done any Olympiads where they have done very well, somewhere work experience, something that will, make them stand out differently, and they'll be able to assess their aptitude for that. From this year onwards, universities will now, instead of just the 15%, they are now looking to get into starting the aptitude-based admissions up to 50% of each intake over the next few years. So what that means is basically, instead of just relying on the academic, profiles, they are actually wanting to see students who have, individual talents and aptitudes in different things. So they will take that into account. When you are applying for admissions, you need to specify if you wish to be selected through this scheme, and there are certain requirements where you need to, give certain recommendation letters and other things that are there. So this is something that has changed through the years, because till now Singapore was more and more taking into consideration only academics. So this gives a fairer chance for students who have other talents and other aptitudes, which can then and on the basis of that they can actually get into these top universities. So the first university, as as I said, I will look at 2 or 3 of the top ones from each country. The National University of Singapore. It is ranked very high in the global top 10 for programs such as law, computer science, mechanical engineering, geography, accounting, finance, pharmacy, etc. So it is a very, very prestigious university. Usually the applications start from 15th of October. It will start this year from 15th of October. Indian students are not eligible for dentistry, law, medicine, and nursing. The reason being is that the applications that are there start from October and end in the end of March. But for these programs, they need to have their results by the end of March, which will not be possible for any Indian student to get, because usually the results are in May. So Indian students are not eligible for these programs. They are eligible for all the other programs. And even if they were, and there aren't hardly any seats for international students. So I would say that, it's not really advisable, or you cannot really do these programs. For students who are coming from the CBSE board and the ICSE board or the ISE board, do not need to give any entrance exams. It is purely based on their 12th results. So the SATs and the ACTs are not needed for admissions to NUS, but students coming from the state board need to give one of these exams, either SAT or the ACT. Okay. So they have merits, for exceptional achievements, co-curricular activities, international science Olympiads. These all carry a lot of weightage, but it is, as I said, highly, highly competitive. If you're looking at taking admissions in NUS, a student would need something above a 97% in their boards. Decisions are made after the board results. So once you fill in the forms and the results come in, you give the results, and then your acceptance or non-acceptance are given straight after that. IIT rankings of IIT Advanced, JEE Advanced is also taken into consideration. If you have something of a rank within, say, around first 2,000 or 3,000. So as I said, it is a very competitive university to get into. There are many scholarships that are there. The science and technology undergraduate scholarships that is given for students from Asian countries apart from Singapore. This scholarship has a bond which you need to serve for 6 years. So instead of just the 3 years that you need for the tuition grant, here you serve 6 years, which includes the 3 years for the tuition grant. So a student would have to, if they are given this scholarship, they're required to serve a bond with a Singapore registered company immediately after graduation. Again, as I said, the tuition fees are taken into consideration. A living allowance is given of 6,000 Singapore dollars. One-time settling allowance is given. It's an airway passage from and to from Singapore in the beginning and the end of the course. So this scholarship is a very good scholarship. But as I said, it does require you to then serve for a Singapore-based company for a Singapore-registered company for 6 years. The GIIS scholarship is again another scholarship that is given for outstanding students for all of these universities, NUS, NTU, SMU, and SUTD. Again, they have everything that is included, the tuitions, other compulsory fees, airfare is including, hostel allowances there, and settling allowances here. Here you have a duration of 3 years. So instead of the other one, which had a 6-year bond, you here only have a 3-year bond. So when you are applying to these universities, you can then, you are automatically, if you wish to be wanting to get, avail of these bonds, scholarships, you can, do so when you're putting in your applications. Just to give you a fair idea of what are the costs that are there. As you can see, this is the cost per annum, per year. If you see the columns that are there, fees payable by students in receipt of the tuition grant. So for a student, an international student coming from India, they would have to pay 17,550 Singapore dollars, say, for an arts and social sciences program. If they do not avail of the tuition grant, then they have to pay nearly $30,000. So it's nearly double to what if you take the grant or you don't take the grant. So it depends. So if you do not take the grant, then you don't have the bond, and you can just finish your course and pay the full the full amount. These fees obviously are not as high as you would get for Western countries and all that. That's why Singapore becomes a very favorable destination. But so you can see the differences in the fee structure that is there with the bond, with the tuition grant and without it. Okay, the second university that I want to talk about is Nanyang Technological University, or NTU. It has about 33,000 undergraduate and postgraduate students. Collaborations ventures with UK Imperial College is also there in medicine. Some of the key partners are the top universities in the world, like Imperial Technical University of Munich, University of California, Berkeley. Again, you need to have a very high percentage in your 12th, a 90%, but I can assure you it is much more than that. 90% with English as one of the languages. It has to be there. Direct admissions is there for medalists, gold, silver, or bronze of international science Olympiads. They will be given favorable, consideration for admissions. And they have the discretionary admissions, as I had said earlier, or the aptitude-based admissions that are there, which are now going to increase to about 50% of the intake from this year, sorry. Scholarships again, as I said, there are the Nanyang scholarship that is there, the foremost undergraduate scholarship that is there. Full coverage of fees, living allowance, accommodation allowance, travel grant, computer allowance is there. This scholarship is good in that way. It does not, there is no other bond attached to it. So if a student has taken the tuition grant, then they only serve the 3 years, even though they may have taken the Nanyang scholarship. Application procedure is basically the same. When you're applying, shortlisted candidates are then selected for interview. One recommendation letter is there, and applicants are then informed by, say, late May whether they have got the scholarship or not. Another scholarship is the NTU Science and Engineering Undergraduate Scholarship. This is for except for Chinese medicine, biomedical sciences, Renaissance engineering programs in medicine. They are for all the other programs, undergraduate programs that are there. Here you have a 6-year bond like you had for the NUS scholarship. It covers everything like the others. There is another college scholarship which does not have a bond apart from the 3-year bond that is there for the tuition grant. Humanities and Arts program, they also have a certain scholarship, Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences scholarship. Here again, no bond is given, is attached to it. Apart from if you're looking at the tuition grant. So there are various number of scholarships that are available to Indian students if they wish to avail of them. Fee structure for NTU, this is basically just to give you a rough idea of what it would be like. Again, as you see, subsidized fees and non-subsidized fees for international students. It's nearly double as like it was there for NUS. So one has to see whether they wish to avail of the tuition grant or not. Personally, I think it's a good thing, but it is totally up to the student and the parents themselves. Singapore Management University. Now, this university is slightly different in their admissions. They have majors in entrepreneurship, politics, law, economics. So their programs are very, very good in management and law and all of those programs. But they do require the SATs or ACTs. So unlike the other universities that are there, Singapore Management University does require a student to take one of either the SATs or the ACTs and the TOEFL or the IELTS. So the range of what is required for each student is given here. Again, shortlisted applicants are then, will be asked to invited for scholarships and interviews if they are selected. So this is slightly different to the other universities, as I said, where the admissions are considered. There are many scholarships that are there for different types of programs, and students can avail of them. They can apply for them while they're applying for admissions. And if they satisfy the criterion that is given by the university, then they can avail of all of these scholarships that are there. Tuition fees, again, as I said, if you see what is available, annual fees, subsidized fees here for most of the programs apart from law is around 24,500. Whereas if you are not looking at the subsidized fees, it's around 44,500. So again, nearly double to what it is there for subsidized and non-subsidized. So the visa requirements, so once a student has been admitted to any of these universities, obviously a student visa is required, as is required for any country. So the documents required for a student visa, a Singapore student visa, you obviously need to have a valid passport, a travel card, arrival entry card, photograph, a printout of the E-Form 16, submitted through the solar system. So the students pass online application and registration. It's a form, it's an online form that a student will fill, where this form is generated, and through that their visa applications go through. In principle, approval letter, which is the approval letter given by the university that they have granted admissions. Financial documents, so bank statements and etc. So to show that you have enough financial weightage for you to be able to afford the program. Medical report in the subscribed format is there. The medical report cannot be more than 3 months old. So you need to have a current one. They will tell you the type of tests and what they are needing, whether vaccinations and things like that. So accordingly, you will have to submit a report. Singapore, the visa processing time usually is not very long, maybe about 4 weeks to a month, but one should try to do it a little earlier than that, because sometimes there are more applications, so one should do it accordingly, not leave it for the last moment. Employment during study. So according to the Ministry of Manpower of Singapore, international students who are on a student pass or a student visa are allowed to work for 16 hours a week during their term and unlimited time during their vacation. So if a student coming from an international student going to Singapore has registered themselves as a full-time student in one of the approved institutions, they can work for 16 hours during their term and for an unlimited time during their vacations. Provided, obviously, as I said, they're a full-time student and they hold a student pass or a student visa. An international student will not need a work pass to work full-time during vacations. There is also something called Industrial Attachment Program. This is basically where certain programs have internships that are a prerequisite for finishing their program. And for this, they do not require a work permit. It is allowed for a student to do these internships. These internships are usually for about half a year, 6 months, although they may vary. They may pay you something. Generally, they are usually paid internships, but the salaries vary. So they are allowed to have this do this industrial attachment program if their course requires them to do so, if it is mandatory for their course to do so. After graduation, if a student wishes to stay back and work, so usually when students go out of India, one of the usual things that they would like to have experience of working in the country where they have taken their degree and obviously earn back some of the money that they have spent in their education. So if a student wishes to stay back after their graduation, they would need to have a different type of visa. So if a student has a job offer, if you do not have a job offer before you have finished your graduation, at the time of your graduation, then a student can apply for a long-term visit pass. This long-term visit pass is non-renewable. It is valid for 1 year or 12 months, and a student can look for employment in that time and see if they're able to get some job or something. And if they do, then they will then change their long-term visit visa into a work pass. The work pass is generated usually by the prospective employer, so they will file for it, and like every other country, they will file for your work pass. If you have a job offer by the time you are an international student is passing out or graduating, you can straight away apply for an employment pass. There are different type of employment passes that are there depending on what type of graduation you have done and what type of job you are going to do. So at the end of this presentation, I have made one slide where many of the important websites are needed. So you can then go in and find out more information about the employment passes that are there. Okay, now that I've finished Singapore, I would like to then get into Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is also a very, very, I know there will be many students who are, a little, skeptical about Hong Kong at the moment. But I would like to just inform you that there are so many good, very, very highly prestigious universities in Hong Kong. The University of Hong Kong is one of the most prestigious ones. It's more than a century old. And the best thing about the universities in Hong Kong, it's like a melting pot of Eastern and Western cultures. Very diverse, the lifestyle, official languages, you have Chinese as well as English. So you will not have difficulties in studying for a program there, because many of the programs are taught in English, so you would not have any difficulty that way. Institutions adopt international standards in their curriculum. There is a lot of quality assurance. Internationally they are recognized because there is a lot of research, and they hold a lot of many of the universities abroad or people abroad think very highly of them because they are very good institutions of learning. So top universities of Hong Kong: University of Hong Kong, as I said, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, City University of Hong Kong, etc. So these are some of the top 10 universities of Hong Kong. And as I said, they are very, very prestigious and as competitive to get into as well. So I would like to just go into the basic requirements for Hong Kong University. Here, it is not solely based on your 12th standard marks. You would need to have a minimum of 85% in your boards. And most universities require the SATs or the IELTS tests for admissions. Recommendation letters from your professors or employers, teachers, a statement of purpose. I have gone through these things in the earlier, webinars, so I think most of you know what a statement of purpose is. Students who score about 75 to 80% in English in their 12th can also get a waiver for their English requirements, English proficiency requirements. So if you do have that, then you don't need to give your IELTS. But the SAT is mandatory for most of the Hong Kong universities. You need to have well-balanced extracurricular activities, maybe internships, community service. There is a lot more rounded requirement of a student. It is not just academics, for the universities of Hong Kong, because they look at other things as well. Normal range of expenses, as you can see, the tuition fees for non-local students. You can see that these are per annum, for whether it's the tuition, accommodation, living expensive, miscellaneous. So you can have a fair idea of what would be the total cost for a student if they wish to study in Hong Kong. Still very reasonable according to what the standards are there in many of the Western countries. But again, like Singapore, Hong Kong also has a lot of scholarships that are available to Indian students and international students. So Hong Kong Special Administrative Region scholarship that is there, 80,000 Hong Kong dollars per year for these students that are there. 10 scholarships are awarded to every year for students from the Asian countries as well as India and Korea. And there is a lot of, encouragement for students from outside to come and study in Hong Kong. They appreciate international students coming, and they try to help these students by giving these type of scholarships. Self-financing postgraduate education fund, Belt and Road scholarships. So there are many, many scholarships that are there, which a student can avail of. You just need to find out which they are and apply for them when you are giving in your applications. That is the time when you apply for the scholarships as well. So one should look at these scholarships if you are thinking of applying to Hong Kong. Hong Kong University. Admissions at present, you need to have, as you can see, the highest result attained by candidates admitted was an average of 99%. Now, I know that sounds next to ridiculous, but believe you me, I have seen students who have got a 98 and have not gotten in. In Singapore, in Hong Kong, I would say a 95 is definitely something that is needed. You need to have, as I said, personal statement is there. Evidence of a second language, which is not Chinese, not necessarily Chinese. So this is something that is a different type of requirement that is needed for Hong Kong University. They require a student to have the evidence of a second language. Now, this requirement can be fulfilled by either giving an SAT subject test in a certain language or an AP subject test with a certain grade. Or if you are not able to do that, then you must apply to them and tell them that you're applying for a waiver for the second language. And in certain circumstances, they will do that. So this is a different type of requirement that is needed for Hong Kong University. Tuition fees for Hong Kong per academic year for non-local students about 1,64,000 Hong Kong dollars are there. Accommodation, living expenses, miscellaneous. Again, there are so many scholarships that are there, depending on where you fit. So entrance scholarships for medalists of international and Asian Olympiads. Those who are applying for dual degree programs, and students that are coming from the Asian countries and India, they have the targeted scholarship scheme, which is also available to them. So one has to have a look. One has to sort of explore what are the things that are available. And many times it is definitely possible for students to get the scholarships that they want. They do obviously need to have a good record, academic record. Hong Kong University of Social Science and Technology is also a very, very reputed university. Again, you would need around an 85 to 90% in your boards, in your 10th results, as well as 11th, 12th results. At least 75% in your English is required. And again, that you can ask for a waiver for English, the IELTS examination if you have more than 75%. These are the tuition fees that are there. Approximately $140,000 per year is needed for tuition for this university. This has exceptional programs in engineering and science. So students who are wanting to get into this, they can do this, apply for this university. Again, as I said, scholarships are there, university scholarships, sports scholarships are there, Olympiad scholarships are there. So depending on where you are and what you have done, you can apply for these scholarships and hope that you will get some sort of benefit for when you're applying to these universities. The Chinese University of Hong Kong, again, one of very reputed university, and their programs are very well known for business administration, engineering, law, social sciences, and science. The fees are more or less the same in all of these universities. You can see whether you can afford them and look for these scholarships as well. The thing with applying to Hong Kong is that they do not have a bond attached to any of the scholarships. So that is one big plus point for applying to Hong Kong. So you can definitely look at that. The Chinese University, these are as I said, the scholarships that are there, like the other universities. So as I said, you must look around for these scholarships and apply for them. So, again, as I had done for Singapore, the same thing here, the visa requirements that is needed. Once you have been accepted, a student must have a student visa and an entry permit. Documents that are needed, there is a form ID 995A that needs to be signed by the applicant, completed form that has to be there, photocopy of the identity travel documents, so your passport, unconditional offer letter from the university, so your acceptance letters that is needed to be there, copies of your results, so your mark sheets, transcripts, extracurricular activities, certifications, your TOEFL or your SATs, scores. They have to go straight to the university, and you need to have copies of them. You have to show living expenses requirement. You need to have bank statements, evidence of your financial standing through your bank statements, so that they can say that they know that you can afford the program. and accommodations arrangements in Hong Kong, an undertaking taken by the sponsor. Usually that is prepared to provide accommodation. The university themselves, if you're doing it on campus, they will give you a letter. Or if you are applying for accommodations outside of the university campus, then the the accommodations, the sponsor will give you that letter as well. Employment during study. Being a non-local student, unfortunately, you are not allowed to take up paid or unpaid employment in Hong Kong during the years that the student is studying. Apart from, there are exceptions to this rule. If you are doing some sort of internship, so if you are doing a full program, 1 year, you can do, if you're doing an internship, you're allowed to do that internship for 1 year. Part-time work, you can do on campus. So so 20 hours per week can be done by a student on campus when the student is studying, but they cannot work outside of the campus. If in the summer jobs, a student can work without any limitations in the working hours or the locations. So they have definite dates from 1st of June to 31st of August. A student can work outside of the campus doing a summer job, full-time job. That is no problem. Or if they, during the time they are studying, they can do 20 hours per week, but only on campus. They are not allowed to work outside of the campus. So one needs to abide by these rules if you are looking for some sort of employment in Hong Kong. Employment after graduation. So as I said, Hong Kong really wants to retain and attract great talent, skilled people to stay back in Hong Kong. And therefore, a student who has graduated after their degree, they can stay in Hong Kong for 12 months after graduation without any restrictions of seeking a job or anything. So they are allowed to stay back in Hong Kong, look for a job, or even just stay back and they wouldn't want to stay back just like that. So for looking for a job, then there is no other problem or nothing else attached to that. So non-local graduates who have obtained graduation can stay back for 12 months. They do not need to have a job offer to be eligible for the arrangement if they apply within 6 months after graduation. If they apply after 6 months, then you are considered as a non-local graduate, and you may apply for an extension of work. So if a student finishes his graduation and goes back to his country, they can apply for a job in Singapore, in Hong Kong if they wish to. But they will then be considered as a non-local graduate. So it depends, but a student can stay back within Hong Kong for 12 months without any problem whatsoever. Once you have a job, you obviously then apply for a work visa and not a student visa. So as I said, in the end, there are certain websites that I have just put up for you to go through if you wish to look for more information about scholarships or visa rules or work passes that are there, visa applications, etc., etc. And that comes to the end of my presentation. Garima?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, hi.
So for our viewers, number one, please go ahead and put your queries in the YouTube chat box, please. We will go ahead and ask them on your behalf. So Shilpa ma'am, we already have 3 questions. So
Okay.
I'll start with them one by one. So Sangeeta, who's a career counselor with us,
Yes.
she would want to know that is there any difference in the tuition for normal admissions vis-a-vis the discretionary admission process in Singapore?
No, there is no difference in the tuition fees. The tuition remains the same. It's just easier for you to, if you don't have the required percentage that is needed for a certain program, then the discretionary admissions will help you because they will take into consideration other talents or other aptitudes that the student may have. The fees remain the same. Have I answered that?
Yes. All right. So coming to the next question, again from one of our counselors, Parmita.
Right.
So she would want to know that if a student decides to take a gap year and then apply for the universities in either Singapore and Hong Kong for the next academic year, does that make any difference, and is it a hindrance to admission process?
See, a gap year, there is no problem that way in applying after a gap year, as long as you can give good evidence of what you have done with a gap year. See, many students now are looking at gap years as a very favorable thing because they may not be ready with what they exactly want to do, or they want to have some experience about different things. So as long as the gap year has some substance, it has some meaning, and you have done something, significant or something with that gap year and have not wasted it, then definitely there is no problem in taking the gap year and then applying the next year if you wish to do so. You just need to give some, information as to what you have, why you have taken the gap year, and what exactly you have done in that gap year. That's mainly this thing.
All right. So moving to the next question from one of our viewers, Vrinda Rochlani. She would want to know, do economic courses have any kind of industrial attachment programs in NUS and NTU?
I would have to check that. I'm not very sure whether there is something specifically for an economics program. I can check that and let you know. These programs, these attachment programs are there, I know, for engineering and science students, but I have to specifically find out for economics and get back to you for that. I know they have it for finance as well, because even for NTU and NUS, the finance programs are highly coveted and very difficult to get into. But would have to check for the economics program and get back to you, which I will do if you leave your contact details, your email address.
So moving on to the next question again by Otish. He would want to know, can students securing discretionary admission be eligible?
I can't hear you, Garima.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. So I was saying that this is a question from one of our counselors, Otish.
Right.
He would want to know that can students securing discretionary admission be eligible to apply for scholarships?
Yes, they can. Definitely. There is no, see, the discretionary admission is only a tool that is helpful for students who have not made the cut academically. And they have other things that they are talented in, that they have invested a lot of time and energy in, and therefore, can get admissions through that. But definitely, even those students are eligible for the scholarships, all the scholarships that are there. There's no problem with that whatsoever.
All right, fine, ma'am. So requesting all our viewers to please make sure you have put in your questions on the chat box, because I don't see any more. And we have our team member, Thomas John, who's coordinating with them.
Right.
John, if you can hear me, I would request you to also please share Shilpa ma'am's email ID on the YouTube chat box.
Yes.
Anybody can route the questions back to her on email, and we can definitely get back to her and get those questions replied.
Sure, definitely love to do that.
All right, so I think, ma'am, perhaps that brings us to the end of the questions as well. I think perhaps the questions, no questions is also a sign of you explaining it absolutely well. I think it's
I hope so. I hope so.
All right. So on that note, thank you so much, ma'am. I think, as always, a very
As usual.
webinar.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And for all the viewers who are seeing us, please make sure you are tuned in to the next webinar, which is planned on the 23rd of June at 4:30 p.m. So we would have Mr. Kamal Kant, who's the principal and the management committee and from the management committee of IHM PUSA. He will be speaking of careers in the hospitality sector as well as about IHM PUSA, what makes the college so prestigious. So do look in for this space for the 23rd of June. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our Facebook social media handles. That would be great to keep yourself updated on all the information pertaining to IDC. Thank you everybody for joining in. Have a great evening. Thank you, Shilpa ma'am. Have a great day.